kindness and compassion. Not the top priorities. According to one noblewoman, discipline reigns supreme. And Alicia Williams, with her unwavering sense of order, would never tolerate any commoners who couldn't keep up. Alicia? Oh, she's the Villainess in this girl's favorite autumn game, known for tormenting the heroine. But rather than despising her, our protagonist admired her sharp tongue and relentless attitude. The heroine? Too sugary for her taste, what with her angelic smile and knack for manipulating the prince's feelings. While her friends dreamed of becoming the adored heroine, she knew that if given the chance, she'd much rather be the Villainess. And then, it hit her, she is the Villainess. Reincarnated as the 7-year-old Alicia, daughter of the prestigious Williams family, she was no longer the meek child she once was. Instead, she saw this as her opportunity to be the most legendary Villainess in history. Alicia darted down the hallway past her bewildered mother and maid. Gone was the lazy girl of yesterday. She had big plans, starting with sword training from her brothers. Henry, the stern one, scoffed, thinking it was another whim. Alan, the playful one, laughed it off as typical. Only sweet Albert agreed to teach her if she could complete 100 sit-ups and 50 push-ups daily for a week. No problem, she thought, as she dashed off. Next up, magic. Alicia knew that mastering the arcane arts, especially with her family's dark magic pedigree, was essential. However, the Williams library was surprisingly lacking in magic books. Undeterred, she grabbed a book on plants instead, figuring she'd need more than just magic to be the ultimate Villainess. She learned about fever-curing herbs, glowing flowers, and flying trees. So engrossed was she in these strange new discoveries that she lost track of time. Who knew botany could be so villainously fun? Turns out Alicia's brain was top tier when it came to academics, but her body, not so much. After barely squeezing out 50 shaky push-ups, she realized physical prowess wasn't in the cards for her, at least not naturally. But ambition waits for no one, so she kept pushing through. To her surprise, the next day, those push-ups and sit-ups were a breeze. By the end of 7 days, she'd leveled up dramatically: 300 push-ups, 500 sit-ups, and a library's worth of knowledge crammed into her head. She was a training machine, and her progress had the whole family on edge. Her father, Arnold, couldn't help but ask what had possessed her, especially with the whole waking up early thing. Alicia, now radiating suspiciously good vibes, smiled and assured him she was just fine. She knew she was giving off major, plotting something evil energy, which only made her giddier. After all, no one would believe she remembered a past life as a Villainess enthusiast. When her mother mentioned that Albert was out touring the Magic Academy preparing for his upcoming enrollment, it meant her sword training had to wait. But Alicia didn't let that slow her down. By the time her brothers returned, they were with all the other noble heirs who would soon be conquerable routes in the game. There was Eric of the Hudson family with fiery red hair and, of course, fire magic. Finn from the Smith family, a light magic prodigy. Gale of the wind-wielding Evans family. And Curtis from the Kenwood family with green magic, an outlier not from the 5 great noble families. And then, there was Prince Duke Seeker, heir to the throne, water magic user, and the guy destined to end up with the game's heroine in the good ending. Alicia. She was totally into him in her past life, but romance was for the heroine. She had bigger plans, like making her mark as the world's greatest Villainess. When Alicia ran up to greet them, her brothers introduced her to the group, who all found her adorable. Internally, she was melting at their good looks, but externally, this was her moment. She couldn't let the world's future Villainess be seen as some bumbling child. With perfect grace, she curtsied, and the boys were genuinely impressed, especially since her brothers had painted her as a bit of a wild child. Duke, however, was less captivated, more focused on the boys showing off their sword skills. Cue Alicia, reminding them that today was the day they'd promised to teach her. Her brothers brushed her off, clearly not taking her seriously. So, what did she do? She grabbed Albert's sword, kicked a tree, made a fruit fall, and sliced it in half with zero effort. "Don't underestimate me," she declared, now basking in the astonished looks of her brothers. Duke, who had previously been aloof, was finally paying attention, picking up the sliced fruit with a smile. Looks like she'd made her impression. A year into her sword training, Alicia was still stuck in the endless loop of practice swings, all because her brother insisted swordsmanship was pointless if she couldn't hold a sword for hours on end. Honestly, if she weren't on a mission to become the world's greatest villainess, she'd have quit ages ago. The only silver lining: Prince Duke had been making regular visits to their house, and let's just say, she didn't mind the royal eye candy. One day, mid-break, Duke approached and casually asked if she was done for the day. It was the first time he'd spoken to her directly, which was a moment. She replied she was just resting, and he asked why she worked so hard at swordsmanship. She almost blurted out her grand plan to become a villainess, but caught herself, instead saying, "I'm aiming for a villainously strong grip." He chuckled nervously, clearly not prepared for that, then patted her on the head, which instantly turned her into a flustered mess. Enter Albert, and Duke quickly stepped back, apologizing for interrupting her training. Albert wasn't buying it. Afterward, he grilled Duke on why he'd been hanging around so much lately. At first, he thought it was for the books, but now he was starting to suspect the prince had a thing for his little sister, who, of course, was already swooning. Meanwhile, King Luke was busy with the kingdom's VIPs, discussing the crumbling state of Lona Village. Apparently, living conditions there had been spiraling, but rushing in aid wasn't the best move politically. Instead, they shifted focus to finding the legendary Golden Rose, hoping it could bring a much-needed dose of optimism to the kingdom. The conversation eventually turned to Alicia, who had become quite the social butterfly, receiving invitations to various noble estates. Her father, Arnold, still couldn't wrap his head around her sudden shift from being a self-centered little terror to a well-mannered, book-obsessed mystery. At one such tea party at Finn's estate, Alicia walked into the guest room, only to find the whole autumn game cast assembled and a suspicious map laid out before them. Panic set in. Was the plot fast-forwarding to her character's exile already? Before she could spiral, King Luke himself entered the room, asking to speak with her. Seriously, what was going on? The king threw her a curveball, asking what she thought about the kingdom of Durkee's current state. At first, Alicia was confused. Why on earth would the king be asking an 8-year-old about politics? Then it clicked, this was a villainous test. She channeled her inner mastermind, pointing out that while the kingdom was economically strong, the wealth gap between nobles and commoners was ridiculous. People in Lona, she noted, could barely afford bread. Tensions were high, and a rebellion seemed inevitable. The king, clearly intrigued, pushed further, asking how she'd fix it. Alicia didn't miss a beat, suggesting they fund Calvara's independence, gaining a strong trading partner without declaring war. A move that was cunning and, of course, something the pure-hearted heroine would never do. Alicia was feeling more villainous-like by the second. After some royal praise, the king made his exit, leaving Alicia to breathe a sigh of relief. Duke, having witnessed it all, asked if she was nervous. She glanced up at him, thinking, yep, definitely attractive. Elsewhere, Lord Evans dropped the bomb that the Golden Rose had been found. Things were getting real. Meanwhile, Alicia found herself at a dessert table, eagerly stacking macarons on her plate. Duke, who had been staring at her the entire time, couldn't hide his smile. Curtis teased him, remarking that the Ice Prince seemed to have been thawed by an unexpected spring breeze. Later, as the sun set, Duke handed Alicia a belated birthday gift, a diamond necklace that left her absolutely floored. Diamonds were worth a fortune here, way more than in her old world. She couldn't wrap her head around why he'd gift her something so extravagant. Back at the castle, the nobles gathered to watch the Golden Rose bloom, confirming the birth of the saint, a girl destined to guide the kingdom alongside Duke. But with every great transformation came turmoil, and they all braced for the rocky road ahead. As for Alicia, she was in her room, casually doing squats while wearing her brand new diamond necklace. And even if Duke one day fell for the heroine and demanded it back, she was already planning to look him dead in the eye and say, nope, because that's what a true villainess does. The next day, Lisa is in the library, poring over a map when she notices how close the village of Lauren is. All I have to do is cross the forest easy peasy, right? She muses. Though she had fed the king dramatic stories about the village's grim streets and starving peasants, she admits, those tales came straight from books. I need to see it for myself. There's just one problem. Tell my dad. He'd lock me in a tower. That night, Lisa stages a convincing performance of being exhausted, sneaks out under the moonlight, and ventures into the forest disguised. The darkness unsettles her more than expected, but she reassures herself, the village has a magical barrier, and I've got magic, so I'll breeze through, I hope. Pushing forward, she finds the magical wall and passes through, only to be greeted by a stench so foul it makes her gag. She spots a homeless man lying nearby and whispers, "How did things get this bad?" Before she can dwell on it, a voice asks, "What are you doing here? You're not from around these parts." She spins around, ready for dread, but instead, she feels a strange warmth from the man. He introduces himself as Will, and despite his disheveled appearance, he seems kind. He invites her to his place, apologizing for not having much to offer. Lisa, intrigued by his politeness, asks about his past. Will reveals he once worked in the royal palace but lost his sight and was exiled after angering the wrong noble. Lisa is horrified. How could they do that to you? Will, ever philosophical, replies, "We study history to make today better than yesterday. Books are fine, but if you don't use that knowledge, what's the point?" His wisdom takes Lisa by surprise. "I can't believe someone as brilliant as you was exiled," she says, shaking her head. Feeling a connection, she opens up about her ambition to become the greatest villain in history. Will listens patiently, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Before leaving, Lisa promises, "I'll be back. You're way too interesting." 2 years later, after practicing her sword skills, Lisa frequently visits Will. One day, her brothers invite her to join them on a city outing. Albert and the boys have recently enrolled in the Magic Academy, and Lisa suspects the heroine might meet Prince Duke there, sparking the beginning of a romance. They visit a plant shop, where she strikes up a conversation with the shopkeeper, Paul, a fellow noble. He proudly explains the healing properties of plants, to which Lisa responds by rattling off facts about a rare herb called Joja, impressing Paul with her knowledge. Finally, they arrive at Prince Duke's quarters, where he playfully chastises the boys for leaving him out. When Curtis asks Lisa if there's anything she desires, she doesn't hesitate. She wants to test her sword skills. But her overprotective father and brothers have slammed the door on that dream. Big Bro is having none of it. She's 10, and hello a girl. Lisa isn't buying it. "There's nothing in the rules about gender," she retorts. "If that's your decision, I want to hear the logical reason." But her brother shuts it down like an email on a Friday night. "Don't bother, I've already decided." Furious, Lisa declares, "I'm not coming back until you give me a real reason," and storms out, channeling her inner villainess. While taking a dramatic palace stroll, Lisa overhears her brother saying, "She's stubborn, but if we keep saying no, one day she'll just do it herself." Their father responds cryptically, "We can't tell her the real reason." Cue Lisa bursting into the room like, "Were you guys talking about me? Spill the tea." Her father gives her the soft parent look and says, "You're still young, my wonderful daughter. You'll find out at 15 when you enter the academy." Lisa reluctantly agrees, but her father whispers to her brother, "Her sword skills are no joke. If she takes the test, things could get complicated. We've got to protect her childhood, for now." Later, Lisa's lying in bed, plotting her villain arc. "I want to be the greatest villain, but I'm only 10. Moping around won't help." She decides to visit old man Will and spill all her secrets. Maybe he can help her level up. Cut to Lisa heading into the dark forest, wondering if Will's home. It's her first time in the village during the day, and she quickly sees why it's not on anyone's travel list. Poverty everywhere. She's horrified by the scene, especially when a man kicks a child hard enough to send him to the if they had one. Lisa's about to jump in when Will yanks her back, like, "I told you not to come here during the day." She protests, but Will shuts it down. "Worry about yourself first. Never come here during daylight." The next morning, Lisa heads to Paul, the local herbalist, asking for Joja plants to heal that injured kid. Paul's curious but doesn't pry and hands over the plants as a gift. He's trying to keep her coming back to the shop. That night, Lisa sneaks back to the village. Will tells her the boy's not fully healed, but her Joja plant mission saved his life. Lisa, feeling powerless, mutters, "What's the point of becoming the greatest villain if I can't act when it matters?" Determined, she vows to go all in on her studies to become history's most legendary villain. The next day, Lisa decides that magic is her ticket to power. While she's at the library talking about her ambitions, a magical aura surrounds her, and surprise, a hidden section of the library reveals itself, packed with ancient spell books. Lisa's mind is blown. This is it, the key to my villainous rise. She learns that reaching level 50 magic is no small feat. Only the 5 great magical families can usually do it, and the highest recorded level is 100. But if the heroine and Duke could beat that, why not me? Lisa places a book on the floor and tries to levitate it. It floats victory, but crashes down seconds later. Frustrated but motivated, she trains like a magic-obsessed Rocky. Days later, Lisa has mastered object manipulation, a level 5 magic skill. She's proud but totally wiped out. Her body's heavy, and a headache starts pounding. Classic magical burnout. Just then, her dad drops in with some royal news. "The king's here to see you." Lisa meets the king, who compliments her, while she wonders why all the important people are suddenly in one room. The king asks, "Do you love this kingdom?" Lisa, caught off guard, gives her honest opinion, criticizing how the nobility works. Magical power and political authority shouldn't go hand in hand. The current system? Total waste of talent. Her bluntness shocks the nobles, and they tell her to watch her tone. The duke's surprised by her audacity, but the king, clearly intrigued, presses further. "What you said applies to you too. Would you give up your noble status?" Lisa, totally unfazed, says, "Sure, I'm cool with that. Being born into a noble family was just luck. No need to cling to it." The king is impressed. "You're one of a kind," he says. As Lisa leaves, she reflects on the day's events. Exhausted, she plans to rest but promptly collapses with a fever. Duke rushes to her rescue, carrying her to her room and making sure she's taken care of. After some time, Alicia found herself back to full health, credits God, and a little medicine for her recovery. As she wakes up, she can't help but wonder, what's Prince Duke's deal? Does he see me as a sister, or is he just a charming rogue? Determined to lean into her new villain arc, Alicia steps outside with a mission: sneak into the Magic Academy. That big building? Yeah, that's gotta be the one. I know it's early to meet the heroine. Of course, there's a slight hitch. I don't even know what the heroine looks like. After wandering through what feels like a maze of a garden, she thinks, "This place is enormous. I'm not even at the school yet." Sneaking around, she spots some workers but quickly nixes the idea of asking for help. If they realize I'm a kid and a trespasser, I'm toast. Just then, a girl sneaks up behind her and asks, "Lost, little one?" Enter Blee Cather, a student. Alicia, confused by the name, thinks, "Cather? Never heard of that family." Blee reveals she's from a humble bakery-owning family, leaving Alicia bewildered. Wait, isn't she the heroine? How can she be a commoner? Blee, equally intrigued by Alicia's looks, introduces herself, and the two share a laugh. Blee smiles, saying she hopes they'll be friends. Alicia, floored by her angelic grin, mentally notes, everyone's bound to love her. The duo makes it to the school, where some girls approach Blee. Before Blee can explain her lost child discovery, Alicia vanishes, spying on them from a distance. Just then, Prince Duke arrives, and Blee fills him in about the mystery girl. Alicia watches, noting their closeness. They seem tight. Noted. She sneaks into the academy, now confident no one will notice. I've come this far, time to explore. She finds a treasure trove of books on dark magic and beams with excitement over the Academy's vast resources. I can't wait to grow up and enroll here. Meanwhile, in a classroom, students gossip about a child prodigy dark hair, around 10 years old, who's been solving problems beyond their skill level. As they debate who this genius could be, Alicia strolls up to the board and casually explains a geopolitical strategy. One boy blurts out, "Is this what 10-year-olds think about?" The room is stunned. Back at home, Alicia overhears her father talking with Mr. Joan about Blee, calling her dangerous. When her father catches Alicia eavesdropping, Mr. Joan threatens, "How much did you hear? Should I just erase your memory?" In a panic, Alicia promises not to spill the beans about Blee's extraordinary abilities. But she didn't seem evil. Is she really a threat? Her father dismisses her concerns, and when asked if she met Blee, Alicia cleverly dodges, saying it's just a feeling. That night, Alicia hones her magical skills, showing impressive control. Her brother enters, informing her that Blee wants to meet. Alicia greets her warmly, surprising, given her supposed villainess role. At a gathering, Alicia shares her ideas, while recalling that this is the moment in the game where Prince Duke and Blee get closer. She can't just let that slide. Time to make her move. Approaching them, Alicia seethes. How dare a commoner like her get close to Prince Duke? But before she can strike, Blee enthusiastically thanks Alicia for her contributions, further fueling Alicia's irritation. To stir the pot, Alicia suggests Blee showcase her magic on stage. Blee, being annoyingly agreeable, accepts without hesitation. Alicia's frustration boils over. Seriously, she'll agree to anything. When Blee invites Alicia to join her on stage, Alicia quickly declines, stating she's not a student. Blee, ever the sweet one, reassures her, but Duke steps in, telling Blee not to pressure Alicia. Feeling a little guilty, Blee wonders what she did to offend Alicia. Alicia responds coolly, "Not everyone gets along, and that's fine." But Blee, undeterred, says, "If we just talked more, I'm sure we could become close friends." Henry jumps in, agreeing. He advises Alicia not to write people off so quickly. Reluctantly, Alicia agrees to give Blee a bit more conversation. Later, Blee asks about Alicia's favorite flower. "Lily of the Valley," Alicia replies, "beautiful but deadly." Blee shares her love for marguerites. After a round of small talk that feels more like an interrogation, Alicia grows bored. To mix things up, she conjures a marguerite flower with her magic, declaring, "A perfect flower for a perfect girl." The crowd is stunned by her magical prowess. Henry, sensing trouble, orders Alicia back to her room. Alicia leaves, puzzled. What did I do wrong this time? Later that night, Alicia drops the bomb on Will. "I can use magic now, but I'm just a beginner." Will, trying to play it cool, reminds her that most kids don't get their magical spark until they're 13. Then, in true wise mentor fashion, he tells a cautionary tale about some hotshot who thought they could handle level 100 magic at a young age. Spoiler alert, they couldn't, and poof, no more magic, ever. Will gives Alicia the classic slow and steady advice. Just then, Jill wakes up, but instead of being grateful, he stays silent. Will explains, "Don't mind him. Jill's had it rough, he's about as social as a brick wall." Alicia, clearly not bothered, remembers Liz's deep life lesson about marguerite flowers being symbols of trust and honesty. Alicia, being teen villain, thinks she's the perfect heroine, and I'm here trying to be the best bad guy ever. In a bold move, Alicia decides to motivate Jill the only way a villainess knows how. "You should just die already. What's the point of living if you're going to hide from everything?" Jill snaps, "I didn't ask for your help." Alicia, in her not-so-evil way, responds, "You don't get it. Keeping you alive benefits me. You're smart, and I can use that. But remember, I'm the villain in this story." Jill, rethinking life choices, throws a pillow at her, shouting, "I won't let you kill me." Alicia smirks. "Good. As long as you fight, I'll keep you alive." I need you useful. Confused, Jill asks, "Why are you doing this?" Alicia answers, "Because I'm selfish. I need your brains for my plan." Overhearing, Jill's father chimes in, "She's odd, but she's got a good heart." Jill, starting to see her differently, says, "You're not what I expected, but thanks. I'll help." The next day at the palace, the king's assistant is surprised. "Wait, Alicia couldn't use magic before? Is she the saintess?" Duke shuts it down. "No, that's Liz. Golden flowers, magical elements, that's all Liz." The king, unconvinced, warns, "Keep an eye on Alicia. We don't want her magic spiraling out of control." Joan and Arnold agree to keep her under strict training. Later, Alicia admits to her brother that her magic got a little wild. He reminds her of Liz's magical display when Duke had to step in. Alicia, competitive as ever, thinks, "I need Liz around. I want a rival." Cut to Alicia in her room, casually showing off her magic by controlling books effortlessly. Joan tells her, "The king wants to fast-track you into the Magic Academy. You're in at 13. Keep it up." Alicia, unfazed, replies, "I've been training every day." Fast forward 3 years, Alicia's summoned by the king. He's impressed. "You've really leveled up." Arnold adds, "She's had perfect control for 3 years. The king asks, "What's your magic level now?" Alicia proudly says, "Level 80. Impressed. The king grants her academy admission, but with one condition: keep an eye on Liz. With the king dropping a bombshell on Alyssa, he wants her to keep an eye on Liz. Alice is baffled, so the king dives into the story of the Saint Girl, a beautiful, pain-immune legend who helps the royal family bring good vibes to the kingdom of Dorcas. He thinks Liz Cather is the modern-day saint, and surprise, he's heard Alyssa has already met her. Alyssa confirms, describing Liz as sweet as sugar. The commander then hands Alyssa some papers about the village of Lana. She reads them and practically shouts, "What is this nonsense?" The commander explains that if Liz is to work with the government as the saint, she needs to have a good head on her shoulders. His genius plan: get Alyssa to mentor Liz into becoming a respectable saint. Alyssa, momentarily stunned, wonders, will this make me the best person ever instead of being, evil? But evil is my jam. Cue the dissenting minister, who objects to Alice's new role, saying it's far too dangerous given the academy's current chaos. The commander fires back, pointing out that Liz's popularity has skyrocketed, turning admiration into full-blown adoration. Still, the minister warns there are critics lurking in the shadows who might stir up trouble. The commander offers Alyssa an out, telling her she doesn't have to play the villain if she doesn't want to. But the word villain triggers something in Alyssa, and she eagerly accepts, declaring she's aiming to be the greatest villain of all time. Later that night, Alyssa spills the tea to her friend Will. When he asks what's in it for her, she casually says, "Oh, nothing, really. I just made the king agree to my terms totally for free. And oh yeah, Gil is coming with me." The scene shifts to the commander, who is debriefing ministers on Alyce's demands, including her insistence on bringing Gil from the village to the academy. Everyone's shocked to hear Alyssa has been secretly visiting Lana for years and is tight with Gil, whose father was killed and who narrowly escaped a similar fate. Alyssa vouches for him, calling him a diamond in the rough who just needs a shot at a proper education. Cut to Alyssa telling Gil that he'll be joining her at the royal palace as her servant. Gil, understandably floored, reminds her that only nobility can serve the crown. Alyssa, ever the smooth talker, tells him not to sweat the details, he's coming with her. Will chimes in, pointing out no one's ever left the village before, to which Alyssa smugly replies, "This is just the beginning. Soon, the whole village will be the talk of the town." She then asks Grandpa Will if he wants to tag along, but he refuses, calling himself a washed-up criminal whose fate was sealed when he landed in the village. As Alyssa's about to leave, a wounded girl grabs her, pleading for help. Without skipping a beat, Alyssa scoops her up and rushes to a safe spot, but not before catching the eyes of a crowd. Alyssa purifies some water, because of course she can, and gets to work healing the girl's brutal burns. Gil and Grandpa will arrive, and Alyssa, being extra as always, throws up a barrier to block prying eyes. Despite the girl's severe injuries, especially her dead leg, Alyssa pulls off a near miraculous healing. Unfortunately, the leg is too far gone, so she whips out her sword and amputates it. The girl wakes up, understandably confused, and asks, where's my leg? Alyssa calmly explains that the leg had to go, or it would have taken her life with it. Introducing herself as Rebecca, the girl now finds herself Alyssa's new personal tomb. With the barrier down, Alyssa fills the villagers in on her heroic deeds. Then, with a cryptic wink, she asks Rebecca to rally the village, saying she plans to use the saint as an excuse for her next move. Gil, utterly lost, asks what she means by that. Alyssa spills the beans, saying she'll mentor Liz and Lana, but assures Gil that she'll be pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Grandpa Will, now thoroughly intrigued, decides to stay in the village just to see what kind of chaos Alyssa stirs up next. The next morning, Grandpa Will bids farewell to Alyssa and Gil as they leave the village. Gil is wowed by the city's beauty, feeling happy to be back. Meanwhile, Alyssa has a little heart-to-heart with her dad. He asks, "Aren't you regretting your decision?" Alyssa, queen of no regrets, replies, "Not even a little. But hey, you promised I could take the duel test, what gives?" In full dad mode, tells her she's such a swordsmanship prodigy that the test isn't even necessary. Fast forward to Alyssa arriving at the academy, where she gets all the attention. Meanwhile, Gil overhears some girls chatting with Liz, asking if she's Albert's sister and gushing over her beautiful hair. One of them gets a little too handsy, touching Alyssa's hair. Cue Alyssa, who smacks the girl's hand away. Right on cue, Liz shows up with her squad of 4 young men. The hair-grabbing girl whines to Liz about Alyssa calling them obnoxious, but Alyssa, ever direct, says, "Well, you are." Liz tries to step in, all peace and love, asking Alyssa to apologize. Alyssa, channeling her inner villain, refuses and walks off, proud of her evil potential. Just when Alyssa's feeling good about her bad self, Duke with teleportation magic whisks her away. The guy's obviously fond of her, even sniffing the necklace he gave her as a kid. Alyssa thinks he might break it. How embarrassing would that be? But instead, he whispers sweet nothings and pats her on the head. "You're no villain," he tells her, "and you never will be." Alyssa, creeped out by his womanizer vibe, pushes him away and bolts. The next morning, they both stumble upon Liz, surrounded by admirers, sipping tea like royalty. Alyssa, plotting something wicked, picks up a paper Liz wrote. After reading it, she tosses it aside, calling it boring, shallow, and totally unrealistic. The crowd, now riled up, wonders how Alyssa dares to insult Liz, but Liz stays calm and asks, "Why do you find it unrealistic?" Alyssa, never one to hold back, explains that Liz's dream of tearing down the village walls and eliminating inequality is a fairy tale. She points out that breaking the wall won't magically erase centuries of division. Liz argues that tolerance will bring peace, but Alyssa fires back with idealistic nonsense. Reality's more complicated, and your article doesn't get that. Tensions rise, but Alyssa keeps schooling them, saying, "Look, I'm not here to flatter anyone. It's just surprising no one's pointed out these flaws before." One person blows up, shouting, "Don't insult our bond," Alyssa retorts. "If indulging her is your idea of love, you're all useless." Liz finally steps in, defending her friends and saying, "You can reject my ideas, but don't insult them." Alyssa, now in full debate mode, compliments Liz's magical abilities but drops a truth bomb. "You, Liz, are the very symbol of inequality. Talent, family, looks, no one's truly equal. That's what drives people to improve. If we stopped praising strengths for the sake of equality, wouldn't that be an injustice, too?" Liz, visibly shaken, can't respond. She can only mutter, "I just want to create a world where everyone's happy." Alyssa, unimpressed, sighs and says, "Well, that was disappointing. I was hoping for a real debate." She struts out, leaving Liz's friends to console her. Alyssa, now reveling in her villain role, basks in the glory of having crushed Liz's spirit. She vows to stop Liz in her tracks, proving she's the true queen of villainy. In the school hallways, Alicia walked with her head held high, students throwing her looks of scorn and whispers of the nasty girl who dared bully St. Liz. Alicia reveled in the hatred. The disruption she brought to the once peaceful school filled her with pride. Jill, her friend, couldn't understand why everyone took Liz's side after all. Liz was always just preaching grand ideals while everyone else gossiped over tea. But Alicia was unbothered. To her, this was just a sign she needed to spread her bad reputation even further. Her goal was clear: she would become the greatest villainess ever. That evening, after checking off homework, Alicia and Rebecca went to Will's house, where Rebecca, who'd been gathering intel from the village, shared the latest. Tensions were high among the villagers, and some even hinted at plundering everything if they ever managed to escape. Alicia expressed concern for Rebecca's safety, especially with her missing leg. But Rebecca, unfazed, reassured her. Alicia's backing was all the protection she needed. A sentiment that delighted Alicia to no end. She was starting to sound like a real villainess. Rebecca went on to explain that, though the villagers had long ago lost hope of change, her resilience was inspiring them. They didn't see her as a savior, though, so she suggested Alicia bring crops from the outside that the villagers could cultivate. At home later, as Alicia was working on a proposal for Lona Village, her older brother Henry seemed oddly clingy. She noticed he hadn't been spending time with his twin, Alan, and he admitted he was distancing himself. The two had been inseparable until recently, but ever since joining the academy, it was all Liz this, Liz that from Alan, and Henry felt he no longer understood his twin. Liz had tried to comfort Henry, but he wasn't falling for her charm. Instead, he came to Alicia, not to praise Liz, but to share his doubts and ask why she kept clashing with the saint. Alicia brushed off any grand schemes, though Henry looked unconvinced. As he left, he handed her an invitation to the king's next tea party where, unsurprisingly, Liz would be present. At the tea party, Alicia's other brother, Albert, warned her to behave. She recognized this event as the Saint test from the game where the heroine could earn Saint points by making the right choices. With Alicia attending, though, it became her personal Villainess test, her chance to prove herself as Liz's watcher. As the four siblings arrived, Liz greeted them with a smile, while two of her devoted admirers blushed. Alicia, all smiles but sharp as ever, greeted her with, "How unfortunate for you that I'm here." Finn, watching from nearby, couldn't tell if they were friends or foes. Liz, ever the saint, insisted they were great friends. Alicia disagreed. The king soon entered, thanking everyone for being friends with his son, Duke, and encouraged them to relax. Not that this tense tea party allowed for that. Liz, seated near the king, looked every bit the heroine, and Alicia grudgingly noted she had the nerves for it. For Alicia, this was a real-life saint test. If she was to succeed, she'd need to play her part to perfection. When the king commended her for her sharp insight, recounting how she'd predicted Durin's economic troubles 3 years prior, Liz seemed shocked. She'd assumed Durin's economy was stable. Alicia coolly explained that Durin's production didn't match its consumption, and previous measures were little more than temporary fixes. Knowing this was a test of her watcher role, she kept her composure. Liz proposed an alliance with Durin, but Alicia questioned the logic of aiding a bankrupt country. Liz countered that sincerity was key to helping people, to which her fanboys heartily nodded. Alicia, ever practical, reminded her that good intentions don't solve national crises. Gale challenged her, demanding to know her solution, and Alicia proposed making Durin a vassal state, a plan Liz called cruel, of course. Alicia argued that Laval, a neighboring kingdom with whom they had a complicated alliance, could easily seize control of Durin if they didn't step in. Even Derek, a noble, agreed, citing rumors of border tensions. Liz, distraught, wanted to help Durin's people, but Alicia emphasized the importance of protecting their own kingdom first. Durin needed economic self-recovery, not handouts. Alicia even suggested exporting local goods, sparking Liz's idea about Durin's potato crops. In the end, Liz reached the right answer, but Alicia's subtle nod from the king confirmed her success. As the tea party ended, she knew she'd passed her real test not as a saint, but as the ultimate villainess. The four simp boys, entirely oblivious, cheered Liz on with over-the-top praises, gushing about her brilliant ideas as if she'd single-handedly saved the world. With her test safely behind her, Alicia noticed even Duke seemed a little proud of her. But wandering the halls alone afterward, she found the whole party exhausting and couldn't wait to get home. Once the king left, the gathering transformed into the All About Liz show. As she drifted through, her eyes caught the royal family portraits, particularly one with an empty spot. Then she noticed a painting of a young boy who looked like Prince Duke, standing beside a familiar man. Duke appeared and explained it was his father and grandfather from years ago, noting he took after his dad but inherited his mom's skin tone. Alicia, recalling that King Luke had an older brother, was tempted to pry but decided against it. When Duke offered to walk her out, Alicia struck her villainous pose, teasing, "Sure you wouldn't rather stay with Liz?" She half expected him to lecture her, but he simply pointed out she looked hopelessly lost, so he was showing her the exit. Mortifyingly, he was right, and she trailed behind, noticing he only ever smiled at the game's heroine. But when he offered her his hand, his smile didn't seem fake. Meanwhile, Jill was spying on Alicia's morning training when Henry struck up a conversation with him, quickly coaxing Jill into spilling that he was from Lona. Observing Jill's nervousness around everyone but Alicia, Henry advised the boy to mask his emotions or risk becoming her weakness. Alicia arrived, quashing any rumors of her hatred for Liz with a smirk, claiming her true dream was to be a villainess and that opposing someone as perfect and adored as Liz was just exhilarating. Henry burst out laughing at the absurdity but accepted it. On their carriage ride, Henry still chuckled at the thought. He viewed Liz as a protagonist in some grand tale, her every word ringing with unearned depth, even the most obvious of statements. Nice girls weren't usually his type, yet he was clearly smitten. Jill, feeling something was off, asked if there was a spell at work. Alicia mulled it over, feeling Liz's unnatural sway on people was eerie. Though Henry ruled out mental manipulation magic, noting it only worked short-term, Alicia wondered if some ancient grimoire might hold the answer. She refused to believe Liz was so insidious as to manipulate people, yet her fairy tale innocence was straight out of the game. Ironically, Alicia was now worlds away from her own character's version back then, talentless and eventually exiled. Determined to change that fate, she'd worked hard to become stronger. As they pondered, they were ambushed. Jill caught in the grip of strangers who yelled at Alicia to run. Before she could react, a blow to the head knocked her out, and she woke up bound in a storage shed. The kidnappers dragged a battered Jill in, and that's when Alicia's patience snapped. Oh, cliffhanger alert! Want to know what happens next? Then hit subscribe and like.